Since for your first essay you'll be making extensive use of outside materials, today I wanted to take a look at a method we can use so that our usage of outside materials is efficient, effective, and always as clear as possible. This is called the QPS method, and QPS stands for the three stages of the method: quote, paraphrase, and summarize. There are two possible reasons for including outside writing in our own. That writing could give shape to our ideas by virtue of giving us a concept or theory that we're exploring, or that writing could give us support for our ideas if the original author happened to be saying the same thing or endorsing the same ideas that we're using. There are three component parts of quoted writing. There is the original wording of the quoted writing, there is the original structure of the quoted writing, and there is the original underlying idea of the quoted writing. We'll be using this QPS method as a way of being able to get through the wording and structure and eventually get to the idea in the quoted writing, which is what we were after all along. There will be notation in the form of W, S, and I in the following examples. W, S, and I stand for wording, structure, and idea. In a quotation, the original wording, structure, and idea are present. In a paraphrase, the original structure and idea are present. And in a summary, the original idea is present. The quotation stage is where we excerpt as much of the original source as is necessary for the idea that we will be using, but it is worthwhile to note that we don't necessarily need all of the original wording that the original author needed. We'll be using a signal phrase to lead into the quoted material. According to the University of Southern California website, the CARS model assumes that writers follow a general organizational pattern in response to 1, the competition to create a rhetorical space, and 2, the competition to attract readers into that space. The model proposes 3 actions, Swales calls them moves, accompanied by specific steps that reflect the development of an effective introduction for a research paper. There are several things here that I want to point out to you, the first of which is CARS in square brackets here. The original wording was longer, but for the sake of simplicity, I took that out and substituted the CARS model here because I know that we are all familiar with that abbreviation and it makes my usage of the outside writing simpler. Following that, also in square brackets, I have the 3 periods here. This signifies that some number of words have been left out of the original, again, because I didn't need them for the idea that I'm getting to. If there are only words left out, there are 3 periods. If instead we have left out 1 or more full sentences, there would be 4 periods between the square brackets. Following this, if I can direct your attention to moves down here, there are single quotation marks here where there were the standard double quotation marks in the original, because I have to make sure to differentiate what the original author quoted versus what I'm quoting. This will be true anytime you do the same thing. The whole quotation that you're writing gets the standard double quotes, where anything that's quoted inside of it gets the simple or single quotation marks. Lastly, if you'll take a look at the end of my quoted material, you'll see that I've included a citation of 2. The material that I'm citing is coming from a website, and so to get the number that's in the parentheses here, I counted the number of paragraphs down from the top of that website. The words that have been quoted were in the second paragraph, thus the number 2. Next, I have the paraphrase stage. This is where I reword the original quote as closely as possible and maintain the original structure. This is a useful and necessary middle step, but it's very important to note that we can't stop here. If we were to stop the process here without going on to the summarize stage, the quoted material would still be coming mostly from the original author, and its inclusion would be patch writing plagiarism. It's only by this being the middle stage of the process that we can include and use this patch writing as a way of eventually getting to our summary. But again, we can't stop here, or else we run the risk of patch writing plagiarism. My paraphrase goes as follows. This model points out that scholars are always working to be the first to add to the knowledge of the field with their own work, and that the results usually follow a predictable structure. That structure works to make introductions and entire research papers as effective as possible. Now, if you take the two of those, the original quotation and my paraphrase, you could draw lines from one phrase to the other and see exactly how they line up. Just as I've said before, really the wording is the only thing that's different. The overall structure and ideas are still very much the same. Following this, we have the summarize stage. We summarize the original quote using our own wording and structure to show how it will be important to the writing that we will do and the ideas we will develop. So the summary is as follows. What I take away from this is that using the CARS model to analyze my research article should show me just as much about the state of the field as it will help me to see how the article is written and structured. Now, note that my summary is specific to the assignment that we're working on. If I were doing something else with it or needed to make a different point, the summary itself would be different. Just the same way that we've talked before about the way that our reading of research material changes based on our goals, so too will our summary of any material that we've quoted, paraphrased, and discussed. To put it all together then, it looks and sounds like this. The CARS model assumes that writers follow a general organizational pattern in response to 1. The competition to create a rhetorical space, and 2. The competition to attract readers into that space. The model proposes 3 actions, Swales calls them moves, accompanied by specific steps that reflect the development of an effective introduction for a research paper. This model points out that scholars are always working to be the first to add to the knowledge of the field with their own work, and that the results usually follow a predictable structure. That structure works to make introductions and entire research papers as effective as possible. What I take away from this is that using the CARS model to analyze my research article should show me just as much about the state of the field as it will help me to see how the article is written and structured. To reiterate, and maybe to clarify, there are good reasons why we use this QPS method. First, it's always clear where our ideas are coming from. As I said, as I was talking about the paraphrase stage, really there's very little reason for any reader to wonder how we got to the summary. Instead, with all 3 steps, the links are clear. We can see exactly where the summarized idea came from through the paraphrase back to the original quotation. It works in both directions. It is also clear exactly how we got from the way that something looked and sounded in the original to the form that we need for our own purposes. Last, this ties our writing as closely as possible to the outside sources we're referring to for our shaping or supporting influence.